Here we are, it's 3 o'clock, and I hereby call to order of the Ojai Valley Sanitary District Personnel Committee. Do we need a roll call? We're all here.
We have.
All three of us are here, and we don't need any 2449 requests.
Correct.
Oh, do we have any public comment?
We received none in advance of the meeting.
And I don't know who else might be out there in television land.
Yeah, there's links that are on, that's it.
Nothing there. Okay. Well, let's close the public comment portion then and go on to item 4, continued discussion of personnel related topics.
That is my opportunity to jump in as legal counsel. Can everybody hear me?
Okay. Yes, go ahead, please.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. First, so my name is Misha. I work with Robert Kwong as general legal counsel to you guys. So we're here to make sure you stay on track with the law, and we want to make sure everybody understands their obligations about ex parte communications. So I want to ask the directors first if you've had a chance to review the memo that was prepared by Robert and I, dated February 16th, about ex parte communications.
The memo was dated February 16, but I received it in my email at 9:30 last night. I have not had a chance to.
Not had a chance to review it?
No.
Okay. I mean, do you
Not
have a
in
copy
my
with
email.
you?
I mean, I can provide them a copy, Misha, if you'd like.
Okay.
No, I would rather have a chance to review it and then talk about it, because there are some things in it that conflict with my understanding of the Brown Act, and I'd like to have an opportunity to review it before we talk about it in detail.
Well, I just wanted to make sure you all had a chance to read it, but since I'm understanding that you didn't, then I'm still going to ask about ex parte disclosures. We're going to make this a routine to make sure that everything is fair and open and everybody gets the same information. So I'm going to ask the same question that I asked last week of each of the directors who's on the personnel committee, but I'm going to ask back to September 2023. So the November full board meeting is when this personnel committee was first brought up. And so we want to give you an opportunity to disclose any ex parte communications. That is, any communications you've had related to any subject matter that you guys are making decisions on in this personnel committee, from anybody, whether oral, written, banners, airplanes, emails, anything. Okay, so going back to September 2023, Director Quilici, have you received or had any ex parte communications with anybody since September 2023 to the present date? So this would include since our last meeting a couple weeks ago, regarding the subject matter of the personnel committee.
Okay. Yes, prior to the November meeting, but nothing since. Prior to the November meeting, I had phone calls and a face-to-face conversation. Phone call from Mark Chevelle, phone call and face-to-face conversation from Lynn Dubois. Nothing since the November meeting.
Approximately when were those phone calls? So they were prior to the November meeting. Do you remember when?
Between September and November. I don't remember the exact dates.
Okay.
It was that detailed.
And what was the subject matter of these communications?
It had to do
What was
with
discussed?
various aspects of the employee handbook and anticipated problems with new laws potentially.
Okay. I think the best way to cover this ex parte communication is for Director Quilici to write up briefly just the contents of those communications, a summary when they happen, and then they can be distributed and made part of the record for this personnel committee meeting.
Okay,
Okay, so we'll do some follow-up with that, but thank you very much, Director Quilici. Director Stone. Since September
Mine would be the same.
2023.
Mine would be the same people.
Same people. And about the same time period?
I would assume it would be about the same time period.
Okay. Okay, so Director Stone, same goes for you. Please write up just a brief summary of the conversations, what was said to you, so that all that information can be shared with everyone in the decision-making process.
All right.
All right, thank you. Director Kentosh, same question. Since September 2023 to the present, have you had any communications with anyone regarding the subject matter of this personnel committee?
I've talked to lots of people, but I have nothing substantial to report. I take objection to the level of detail that's being requested of us. We read something from this manual. It's called User's Guide to the Ralph M. Brown Act. It says the Brown Act does not limit a legislative body member acting on his or her own. This exception recognizes the right to confer with constituents, advocates, consultants, news reporters, local agency staff, or a colleague. It also says member has the right, if not the duty, to meet with constituents to address their grievances. That member also has the right to confer with a colleague about local agency business. So what I read of Mr. Kwong's memo doesn't seem to allow, and the bylaws for the district say.
So if I could just interrupt you and agree
Let me
with
finish.
you, Mr. Director Kentosh, I agree with you with everything you just said. It's not prohibited that you talk to people. It's only required that you disclose that you talk to people. Otherwise, we've got this backdoor deal-making idea, and why are you keeping secrets? So why keep anything secret is the point. It's open government. We're following open government laws. And so nothing says you can't talk about this subject matter, but everything says you must disclose.
But really, you want us to make a list of everybody we've talked to since September? I mean, I've never heard of such a thing. And
Is that a long list of people?
I don't think the law
regarding-
says that at all. I disagree with you on that. What our bylaws say is substantial. So I have talked to lots of people, but I have nothing substantial to report. Substantive, maybe that's the word. I have nothing substantive to report. If you want to know what I heard, I have here a copy of the November, I'm dating myself. This is a flash drive with audio recording of the November board meeting. If you want to know what I heard in my telephone conversations about this topic, it was all said at a public meeting, and there's the tape right there. But I object to reporting on every conversation I've had with every person I've talked to about. In fact, this last week, I made a point to go around and say, hey, you can't believe what's going on in Ojai Valley Sanitary District. So I've talked to lots of people. I don't feel like I have an obligation to report it unless it is substantial. And by me personally.
I don't know what substantial in your mind means, and it doesn't really matter if it's relevant to the person, to your decision making, what you guys are making decisions about in this committee. That's when you have to disclose.
I would not want to use the information I've received as a basis for any kind of deliberations or decision making. I like making decisions based on facts and real information. That's what this survey is for, to give us real information. I don't like making decisions based on speculation or opinions or whatever, so I have nothing substantial to report.
Okay, I think, with that, my part is done. I will stay to observe and be here if you have questions. Hopefully you won't.
Thank you. I don't mean to be too strident with you. You've done nothing wrong. You're doing your job. Sorry about that.
All right, let's move
Yeah,
on.
no, we're just trying to explain, what the obligations are, and I understand there needs to be some more clarity, so hopefully after you review the memo, if there's anything further that you feel that should be disclosed, you can talk to us, you can talk to Allison or Jeff, get it written down, put in the record. Does that sound good?
If you feel there is anything. Okay.
Can I suggest that we, I would suggest that we go over the survey. What I did was I took the liberty of taking your comments and trying to incorporate them into the survey. If you guys are comfortable with it, going over this line by line, question by question, making sure they're okay. And then I prepared a draft. We're gonna at some point have to present it to staff. I wanted to see how that sounded. I didn't want that to sound like we're doing anything unusual or anything, so. I took the liberty of taking it, you can toss it in the trash can where it belongs if you'd like.
When you inserted lines between the questions and stuff like that.
And yes, I did, I put it. You have a oh, you know what? Maybe she gave it to me and didn't give it to you guys.
Steve, I have sort of a continued point of discussion on this. Here we are handing out things at a meeting that has not been in an agenda, that has not been handed out to the public, it's not been handed out to staff. I have yet to even see or read these documents.
I emailed it to.
You emailed it to Allison at 11 p.m. last night after
I think it was 2 nights ago.
this is required. This package is required to go out 72 hours in advance. This package was published last Friday, middle of the day. We had this conversation about Brown Act conversations and ex parte communications are two different things. But I'm not sure it's appropriate to show up at a board meeting and hand something out, no matter what it is, for anybody to deliberate on when it has not been properly publicly noticed.
So the public won't see it until after you've already discussed it, because they've never seen the document you're using as context.
Does it show, would this show up in a post-meeting packet somewhere?
Yeah, it'll show up as as part of the administrative record on the minutes for that. So the public won't see those until the full board approves them at the end of the month. So they don't know what you're
Sorry.
talking about. You haven't seen it because the copy of
Sure.
the packet is not the same one.
Your legal counsel is going to weigh in at this point. Another reason we have to have any documents that are discussed included in the agenda ahead of time is to give the public an opportunity to appear and speak on those. So it sounds like this would be something to include for the next committee meeting.
Okay, I'll continue on that one.
Okay. Let's go back to item 4, continued discussion, and start with staff. Jeff?
So what we wanted to do was sort of start bringing forward the draft results of the class and comp study. We don't have the final report yet, but we have sort of the tables that are in your package, really a draft. Allison and I are still going through it. There's still some things we need changed and fixed, but we wanted to give sort of a general flavor of where we are. Later in the discussion, there's a discussion about survey, and there's a number of questions on the survey about salary and benefits, and we wanted to kind of set the stage with the data that the district has paid to collect and sort of put it out there as to where we are. It's not suggesting we make changes on it. We move things up, we move things down, we add, we delete. It's really just here is where we are. And so the first step is the draft salary band and current salaries by positions. We put in a table under Exhibit 1, which outlines all the classifications. Now, these classifications, some of them are different names and labels for various staff people than they have today. Because when we went out and did our market survey, we found out that we called somebody and what the market called somebody were different. But remember, the class and comp study started with a review of the classifications we had, a phone interview with every employee, comparison of those job classifications, and then going out in the market and matching those job classifications to other vendors and other agencies. And then finally, once we had that connection between our staff and the market survey, we went ahead and collected the salary data for each and every position on that adjustment. The numbers in the table that you have there under Exhibit 1 are the results of that survey. They're not made up numbers. They're not calculated numbers. They're based on that survey, that salary survey.
So this is not the current OVSD.
It's not, it is like apples and oranges. This is the new survey result based on all of the new data. And we have the 7 steps instead of 5 steps. And we'll go into that in more detail. But in general, those numbers you have right now, snapshot of the market. Step 4, the highlighted section, is sort of the middle of the market. Step 5 above and step 3 below, plus or minus 5%. One of the things you get when you start doing sort of salary adjustments is you never find comparisons to the penny because of all sorts of factors. And so there's ranges of what is the market. It's not an exact dollar and cents. It's a range of dollars and cents. And so step 3 is a little bit low on the market scale. Step 5 is mid-market, and step 5 is a little bit above the market. But between step 3 and 5 is kind of the market as a whole. We then went on, just for graphical purposes, and put a green dot or a red dot based on the actual dollars that our current employees make in those various steps in the ladder. And so you can see that there's the majority of the dots are to the right of the yellow highlighted step 4, which would indicate that most of our employees are paid currently, compared to the market, a little bit up above the market, somewhere in the 4 to 6% range, higher than the mid-market.
Notice there's 14 dots. We have more than 14 people.
There's a couple of people that have the same.
So that must be representing some doubled up. Yeah, okay.
There are a couple of green dots that are off the right edge of the margin. Those would indicate a little bit higher than market. And there's a couple of red dots, 3 red dots left of the yellow line, which would show a little bit less than market. Now, we'll go through some specific recommendations. There's no recommendation coming from us that we're cutting someone's salary. So we're going to be clear about that. There's that on the table. It's not part of our, future conversations, but we may do some adjustments on the red as appropriate, and we may look at the green in the market as appropriate too. And so I think we'll get into some deeper details on those. But on balance, the pay for this district is on the positive side of the market, up top to bottom. So I thought that was good information to have. It just doesn't set any final conclusions, but as we go out to have discussions about where do we generally find ourselves, this is where we find ourselves. Any questions or thoughts or first comments?
My first thought was the table itself seems kind of skewed, because if I look at a grade 101, step 7, that's a higher number than a step 1 at grade 113.
So remember that these, you don't go up.
About 2.5%.
Right.
At least I sampled some of those, 2.5% from one step, from one grade to the next.
Remember, take like step 103, grade 103, customer service rep 1. That person doesn't start with a 103A, work to a 103.7, and then go up to 104. Because that customer service rep is compared to the market as a whole. Comparing our customer service rep ones to the customer service rep ones from other agencies. And so the way the market is driven is market for customer service rep ones is somewhere between 103 step 1 and 103 step 7. That's where the market is, that job description. So when they get to step 7, they're sort of topped out because that's the top of the market. And the only way that customer service rep 1 moves up is either they add additional skills and knowledge and experience that moves them up to a customer service rep 2, or we do another class and comp study survey that says that whole market has changed or moved. You don't sort of go across and up and cross and down and cross and, you move across and that's the market. You don't get to start at grade 103 as a customer service rep and somehow get to a grade 110 or a 112 or a 115, because that's not a market for customer service. If you sort of take the ladder out of it and the grades and go, low paying customer service rep is $26.94 an hour, which is the 103 step 1. And the top pay for a customer service rep 1 compared to other customer service rep 1s at other agencies is $36.44 an hour. That's the market. Somebody wants to make $40 an hour. Well, then they need to come to us and say, hey, I'd really like to advance my skills, advance my knowledge, advance my capabilities. How do I move up from grade 103 to grade 110 or 112 or 115? As they go up, they want to go up, you want to go down the chart in the grades, you have to add some more skills. If your skills are a customer service rep 1, that's the market. And as frequent in public agencies, there are people that top out at step 7 and they don't go anywhere. And their only advancement is their annual cost of living increases, COLAs, over time. And that is very, very typical in public agencies. Somebody tops out and then they spend a long time, depending upon their individual desire or willingness to sort of gain additional skills. They could stay as a grade 3, step 7 for 10 years because the market doesn't keep going up just because you've been here 10 years. But this sort of snapshot says every one of these job descriptions, every one of these dollars was basically collected as a result of our survey. This is a snapshot of all the class.
The Lieber Cassidy survey.
The CPS HR. This is the people we hired back in April of last year.
Okay. Sorry. Yep.
So I think the good news was we're in the market or paying a little bit better than market on the whole. There's a couple of spots we need to look at, just dive into a little deeper to make sure we're appropriate and responsible.
And it just may be a clerical error, maybe I'm looking at this too deep, but collection and treatment plant operations manager, should that be collections or treatment plant operations manager?
No, there's only one. We're not gonna, it is based on the organizational chart, we're not gonna have separate supervisors for the treatment plant and the collection system. That we've combined those two roles into a higher role that one person is going to, Bradshaw in his current, is handling the management oversight of both groups. He's integrating the teams in the same teams. He's doing the same safety training. He's doing the same reporting. He's doing the same all the same documentation. And so we're not going to have two different separate departments. We're going to have one, which is operations.
And then below that, there's operators, technicians and such.
Correct. So then there's collection system operators, there's treatment plant operators, and there's lab, positions under that one position. It's one team. It's not, going forward, looking out 20 years. I don't think we want to have two teams that have two identical sorts of systems and different perspectives on things. I would rather have one team teaching safety, whether it's no matter where you work. Working, integrating time, how they share work between the two.
We see that every month in the operations report that people are helping with collection or vice versa.
I just think in the long term, it's one mindset. It's one sort of, we don't have separate sets of tools. We don't have separate sets of, systems or reporting or paperwork or documentation. They should all be on the same maintenance software. They should all be on the same training of equipment and pumps and sharing of everything. They do have different color uniforms because the guys at the plant just don't want to wear bright green, neon green. Well, the guys in the collection need to wear neon green because they're out in the streets.
Yes, that's car repellent kind of stuff.
So it's one team. Colors are basically, they don't want to wear high visibility green in the plant.
So there are different certificates that either one of these managers would have to have to be a manager?
They have to be able to, in order to be run the plant, you have to have, in order to be a treatment plant operator and run the plant, you have to have a state certified treatment plant requirement. In order to do safety for both, you don't have to have both. In order to do staffing for both, you don't have to do both. There are some additional requirements for treatment plant operators the collection system doesn't have to have, but for instance, collection system guys could go down and do the biosolids tilling. That's not plant operations. So we keep track of who's doing what, but there's a lot of operations where they're sharing tools and equipment. Confined space is all the same. Motors is all the same. Lots of activities that are identical between the two. Traffic control is still the same. Operating, some of the equipment, on the sides is the same. But a collection system guy can't go into the filter room, filter pumps and change the filter settings. That has to be done by a treatment plant operator.
The operations manager, he has to have the certifications appropriate to collection system and to treatment plant.
No, because we still have, like, under the treatment plant, we have to have legally a treatment plant operator. That has to be the certified person under our permit. That does not have to be the manager. That could be the senior operator at the plant.
Okay. And the same for the collection system?
Same for the collection system.
Well, I didn't realize you were doing that. So presently we have a supervisor in charge of the treatment plant and a supervisor in charge of the collection system. There are two different supervisors and you have a manager over the two of them.
Well, we did. When Mark retired, we combined the two.
That was one of those
Who was,
temporary upgrades.
who was Mark? Mark was
Chevelle, he was the collection system supervisor.
the collection guy in charge of the plant.
No, we have a plant guy in charge of collections.
I see. You can still have two departments, two groups, and have the same safety program, the same uniforms, whatever you want to do. You don't have to have one supervisor. But what is your motivation for having one supervisor instead of two?
Because I think it's more conducive to having one team. You have all the same people, the same person being supervised in the same manner, in the same structure.
less level.
one less level of manager.
It was a lot of parallel duplication. Because a lot of the requirements are the same.
Now you have one supervisor in charge of both.
Correct.
And Rick Knack, where is he fit?
NAC is under this new organization, is really just managing our major projects right now. He has indicated that he may retire in the next little bit, and when he does, we will not replace his position. We don't need a dedicated major capital projects manager when we're not doing major capital projects on an ongoing basis.
Is there, well, you've got someone marked with a little dot, the collection and treatment plant operations manager
That is Bradshaw.
is Bradshaw. Okay. He's the one that you put in charge of
Yes.
both sides of the
Yes.
team, let's say,
And he works out of both offices.
tier and the plant.
Yes.
Okay.
How many supervisors then are we gonna have? We're gonna have the field workers. I mean, this is looking like a very flat organization.
Well, I think there's some benefit to that. We're going to basically have three groups in our organization going forward: administration, engineering, and operations. And each of them take a big chunk of the organization and complete that work.
Well, I mean, during an emergency, whoever's in charge of the treatment plant's gonna be wanting to spend all his time working 24/7 on the treatment plant, getting it working again. The collection guy, when you get the Ventura River washing away your pipes and all your raw sewage is going out to the ocean, he's gonna wanna focus on that. It seems like we kind of remove our redundancy for handling emergencies.
Well,
We have just one supervisor in charge of everything.
I disagree. When we have an emergency, we have wonderful teams that cross-train. We don't have people that run off into their own little corners and say, I'm not doing this, I'm not helping out. Everybody helps out here. When there's an emergency, or when there's any activity, everybody helps out. Collection system guys and the treatment plant guys, the operators communicate regularly about all kinds of things that cross the border between plant and collection system. We have an 800,000 gallon storage pond at Santa Ana Lift Station. The collection guys and the treatment plant guys talk about, hey, can you shut that down for a little bit and give me some breathing room? They talk about what's going on between the two of them and how the two of them can help. So I think there's tremendous synergy with one group.
So these are your lead operators basically talking back and forth.
Right.
Underneath Bradshaw.
And so I know you guys gave us a copy of the org chart. Where did I see that?
At the last committee.
In the last meeting packet.
Last committee packet. Okay, I'll look there. And is that the proposed organization going into the future, or is that today's?
That's proposed going forward.
And how many supervisors are you gonna have in operations? You're just gonna have one?
We're going to have one manager to manage the whole group.
You know,
Responsible,
what else is round to them?
and then in each collection system and each treatment plant, we're going to have a lead operator. Not writing the reviews for their fellow people, but they're scheduling the work. They're talking about what's going on. We have a situation right now where Bradshaw needs to be out of the office for a few hours for medical reasons. Well, I've already talked today to Riley about how we're going to operate the plant tonight when we get another band of rain about 8 p.m. So we have these lead operators that are fully capable of making decisions, and they stay in contact with me. I was getting texts and phone calls last night at 11 o'clock at night. When we have situations that arise, they don't run off and do their own thing. Very, very engaged with each other up and down the chain of command.
Sounds like the lead operators are basically the supervisors that you're talking about, but they are not taking on administrative duties like personnel reviews. That
That is correct.
sound about right?
Yes.
They're more of like, they're working supervisors with less of the sort of administrative burden.
That's what I always hoped for.
Makes it a very flat organization. That has to sink in a little bit. Have you talked to staff about that?
Yeah. They've been operating since we put some of the staff in these interim roles probably 6 or 8 months ago. And they've been operating in that role currently sort of on an interim basis. I think it's the right way to train the next generation of leaders. It's really hard for somebody to drive some equipment or be on the wrenches and one day say, you're now the supervisor, go write performance reviews and be responsible for OSHA safety, permit compliance, air quality rules, all kinds of things when they've spent their whole career practicing and gaining technical experience. And so this interim role or this mid role for these groups is a great way for people to learn how to think about situations that they didn't have to think about when they were just working on the system. There's a lot that goes on between the pipes and a board meeting. How do we do a budget? How do we do a capital improvement program? What's it take to deliver a project? What's it take to respond to, you know, how hard is it to do monthly reports to the regional board and what do you include in it and how do you justify and document what you did? And there's a 1,000 details going from being an operator to being the manager. And these mid roles, we're not a flat organization. We just don't have a lot of bureaucracy. We have people that have taken on these more growing roles while they learn not just the technical aspects of the job, but the administrative aspects of the job in a safe, controlled environment. And I've talked to every one of them. Went down to the plant this morning and I said, Riley, what's your plan for the next couple of days? He had thought through all of the scenarios and how to think through it. That's how we need to operate is people that communicate. We can't put people in silos and take them away from not integrating with the rest of the organization. They get isolated. And this operations group needs to be one group and they need to think and operate, you know, as one group. They need to have all the same, it's as simple as having all the same pumps, emergency pumps. They need to be the same so that the hoses hook up and are interchangeable, so that the parts are interchangeable. So if we take pump 1 or pump 2 or pump 3 and move it around, it's completely interchangeable in the system and they all know how to use them. You can't have treatment plant special pumps and collection plant special pumps, nor can we have leave request forms at the plant and leave request forms at the collection system. It's all one leave request form.
You have one leave request form and still have two supervisors.
Sure, but
But my concern is that the world is tending more and more towards the administrative side of things. You know, we're being burdened with paperwork and report writing and all that kind of stuff. And you kind of have a big flat organization where you've taken all the paperwork and the administration work, put it onto one guy and you told him he's.
no, because at the same time, that one guy is now teaching the lead guy in each of the collection system and treatment plant how to do those forms. So he's not doing it all and staying isolated because the other situation we have is we need cross training. How does somebody learn the next skill? How does somebody walk up the ladder? How does somebody get advancement if they've never done a monthly report to the regional board? So right now, rather than Bradshaw doing the monthly reports like he used to, all by himself for the treatment plant, he now has 1 month he has Carl doing the report, and the next month he has Riley doing the report, and then he reviews it. So they're learning how to do those reports rather than just running the plant. That's how we gain experience. That's how you cross-train. That's how you do succession planning. Succession planning doesn't work if you take one guy and he does everything in his complete isolation, and then one day he retires, and you go, what did he do? Nobody has any idea how that person operated, or what was even required.
I'm just concerned with the process. Take all of our work, get rid of all our supervisors, and the only supervisor we got leaves. Who's learned? I need to soak it in.
Well, we're not taking away a supervisor. We added. Bradshaw was all by himself at the plant. He now is teaching 2 people below him how to do his job. He is also teaching Israel how to do his job so that Israel can take over the responsibility. We had Mark retire. Now what we said is we're not going to just add another person and another layer back in the organization. we're going to take this opportunity to now take a group of our employees that are really good at what they do and teach them how to come up the chain of command. This is succession planning.
Chain of command is just operator, lead supervisor, and overall supervisor.
Lead operator up to operations manager. Those are the
Right, you got operator, lead operator, operations manager.
operator. That's exactly right. Yeah.
It seems like it leaves a lot for redundancy. Well, you've thought about it more than I have. I'm just gonna soak it in. Can we continue on with your?
Yeah, I guess,
presentation?
I guess my only concern is, and I think maybe you've addressed it. We might at some point want to sit down and talk about it a little more. Document it when we do.
'Cause I never,
I'm just concerned about somebody working in elections for a number of years, and then this position comes up to take over a management position. And they miss out because maybe they don't have certificates in the treatment plant. Understand that, or have been given the opportunity to cross train on that side.
Well, one of the
Or
situations,
vice versa.
no, one of the situations, and I've thought of it down the road, is the operations, the collection and treatment plant operations manager does not have to be certified at a grade 4 collection and a grade 4 plant to run legally here. They don't have to be. What we legally have to do is have somebody at the plant who's a certified plant operator. It's a legal status. It's a grade 4 or above at the plant. So we could have a situation, depending under this organization and this structure, where the collection system and treatment plant manager is a collection person, and there is a senior operator at the plant who also holds the treatment plant operator legal certificate. So you can go up either line and get to the top because you're not mandatory. I don't have any collection system or treatment plant operator certificates. I'm not a treatment plant operator. I legally can't go down to the plant and say, hey, turn that valve 50%. I can't do that. Neither did my predecessor. Neither did, anybody else in the system. And so the way we legally operate is we have a treatment plant operator and we have a collection system and treatment plant manager. It can go up both lines of the ladder. But when you get to that position, in order to get to that position, you have to demonstrate the ability to provide personnel oversight, safety oversight, budget oversight, administrative oversight in the operations, and also be part of technical conversations about what to do. Like I said, I can't go tell the plant guys what to do. I can go down there and say, hey, I know an awful lot. Did you think about this? Did you think about that? But if they look me straight in the eye and say, we're not doing it, I can't legally change them. They are certified by the state as the treatment plant operator. But I want all of our teams to be able to flow up. And that's succession planning. We hire these great people and they're here 2, 4, 7, 8, 10 years, and they learn a lot. And then they start to say, hey, how does that work? How do you do that? How do you do a budget? Why'd you do this? Now we can teach them and say, hey, you can still make those steps in your career, in this organization. Now, the unspoken part is we can't have 5 collection system and treatment plant operations managers. That's not physically possible in the size of our organization. So there is some limitation to flow just because of the size of the organization. But I looked at every one of these job descriptions and I said, I want everybody to be able to flow all the way up to the top. I want someone who can come in and start as a customer service rep and be in Allison's position down the road. They learn, they grow, they learn, they grow, they learn, they grow, and spend their entire career here. Now, there can't be 5 Allisons. But the ladder is there, the succession planning is there, the training opportunities and the mentoring is there.
It's hard for me to think of driving down 33 and looking over to the right and seeing that quite an impressive treatment plant facility you have there. I think to myself, there's no supervisor of that plant.
There is.
Certified lead operator.
There is a,
We're not calling him supervisor.
I'm not hung up on, I'm hung up on structure and making sure we have succession planning. We're gonna have two things here. We're gonna have a certified treatment plant operator because that's what the state says we have to do. And we're gonna have a collection system and treatment plant operations manager. They can be the same person. They can be different. They don't have to be the same person.
I'm interested that in engineering and administration, you have assistant general managers in operations. You don't have an assistant general manager operations.
We could put that label on it. To me, it was collection system and treatment plant operations manager. We can, if we need to change the label. To me, those three positions, if you look, forget me or anybody who's here, in an organization where you have a general manager and that general manager is gone or unavailable, in a perfectly functioning organization, any one of those three underneath should be able to step in and make the decisions that are necessary to run the district. They should be able to understand things,
Side of state certification requirements. Yes.
be able to step in and keep the district functioning. And then that same philosophy works all the way down through the chart. If Bradshaw's out for medical reasons today, Riley needs to be able to make the decisions tonight. And he's already talked to me about his plan. It sounded like a good plan. But I also know that as we go through the night and all weekend long when it was raining,
Contact with the enemy disrupts the plan.
but I had conversations up and down and sideways in this organization all weekend. And everybody was making good decisions. Here's the problem. Here's the solution. What do you think, boss? Most of the time I said, sounds good. Keep your eyes on this and talk to so-and-so and make sure you two are in line. And that's what the way we've operated for this weekend, even under extreme high flows. Our normal sewage these days is about 1.8 million gallons a day. We were up over 12 for, and they calmly are going through the methodical process of making everything work and talking to each other. And that's how they learn and gain experience. Hey, that's a great plan. Think about this. Don't forget about that.
And I appreciate that and I like that and I understand what you're trying to do. I just want to make sure that I understand that we're not leaving somebody that requires a certificate of the mix, be able to move themselves up at some point in time.
We have,
I think I'm hearing that that's not the case, so.
in the old days, my career, if you didn't have a PE, you couldn't go anywhere. And we are hearing all over the industry how not only are employers not requiring certain certificates, they're not even requiring college degrees now, some industries, because they can't get the people. I'm a firm believer in this, that we hire good people, that we try and get them as the advanced knowledge that they can get, that we absolutely comply with state certifications of anything that they require. You got to drive a big truck, you got to have an A or B license. I don't get to decide that. But barring that, we hire and promote the best people for the job. I'm not going to let a certificate or lack of a certificate stop somebody who's a wonderful employee from having an opportunity.
But if they do need a certificate, then you get them the training.
And if they do, we later under the benefits, we pay for tuition, we pay for your review courses, we pay for your classes. We're going to help you get there. But we're only going to require those if the state mandates they require them. If you, I don't think a certificate should stop a great person from having an opportunity and having more responsibility, unless the state says thou shalt have it. I just, especially in this day and age, there are lots of wonderful people who are just not test takers or and we ought to recognize that.
Found the first 25 years I spent in aerospace, I was constantly going to my boss saying, teach me how to do your job while I'm doing mine. The last 15 years, I was the one teaching other people to do my job. Worked out pretty well.
There's this hard transition to make, because you say, well, if the person's learning your job and doing your job, why do we need two people sort of doing it? And so there's this transition as someone goes from one job to the next, that when are they capable of doing that job? And you almost, I almost look at it as teaching myself out of a job, teaching the next generation to sort of do my job or do any job in the organization, so that they can, the day that person leaves, can step in and say, okay, it's day one. I'm nervous, I'm anxious, but they've been there before. Maybe not everything everywhere all the time, but they've been there, and they know if they don't know something, there's a resource to help them through, that step. But they're 90% there, or some high percentage there. They're not 5% there. And you go, fine. That's not fair to the organization nor fair to them, and not giving them the tools they need to advance. And I'm a firm believer that we're not going to stop somebody because they don't have a certificate unless the state mandates it. We went through in the job descriptions, and there were places where things said were required. We changed those to say desirable, or can be substituted for so many years of experience. Because, somebody who has 5, 6, 8, 10 years experience of something, but just doesn't have the magic piece of paper, I'm not going to let that somebody back.
Unless the state says you can't.
Unless the state says it. If the state says it, thou shalt, I'm sorry, we have no flexibility. But whether you have this certificate or 10 years experience, you got to have enough experience to sort of represent that higher level. But when you look at the job descriptions, there are very few that say this is required. And if it does say it's required, it's usually a state certificate.
We started seeing that as a lot of the trend when we were provided the comparable descriptions that they used for like market comparison, how diverse they sort of became and how broad they were versus last time.
It's just different now. The environment over college degree and a PE or a this or that it used to be required. Now it's do you have the skills and creativity and curiosity to do the job well? And quite frankly, there are a lot of people that are better at jobs than people that have certificates. And we want the best for the job. So we'll say desirable or substitute for this.
Where you can.
Yeah, right. And so no, I'm this is an open door, an open elevator, all the way to the top. But this is just a snapshot of the salaries. So we got to do some work. We got to dig into some numbers here. We'll make some recommendations on some things. But I just wanted to sort of start with, sort of the 30,000 foot level is something way out of whack, and we didn't see that.
Can I ask a question about the 30,000 foot level? If you're comparing, let's say, our lead treatment plant operator with other agencies, our treatment plant operator, lead operator is performing at a supervisory level instead of a lead operator level. Are you comparing the actual level of responsibilities they have?
Yes. Yes. That
would explain why these green dots are far to the right, because you're taking, they're doing supervisory level work, but they're only a lead operator.
I don't, everywhere we compared somebody, we had a lead operator, we compared them to a lead operator. Not only do we just look at the words, we went into what do they do? What does that mean? What's a lead operator do? sit up in a chair at a control room, or does he run around the plant and do rounds and turn valves and check oil and do physical work?
We're all discussed in this comprehensive
Yes.
study.
And every employee got a phone interview to after the consultant got our job description. We gave them to him. Then we set up phone interviews with every employee. Every employee here spoke on phone to someone there who had their job description and whose expertise is sort of dicing through job descriptions. And then our employee said, "This is what I do." And the interviewer asked questions. So there was this sharing of and comparison of what the paper said to what the employees said they did. So there was a whole sort of matching program up front before we even got anywhere near this.
I asked this question before. When does the board see the classification and compensation study? When do we get to see it?
Well, we don't have the final report yet. These are all the excerpts we have so far, but we wanted to at least start dicing into it. March, probably another month, but this is all the same information.
What I plan to do is look, I'm curious about the lead operator, the supervisor. I want to read that very carefully. Sure.
So they don't match any job description that is not over an 80% match. As far as duties are like for like, they have to be 80% or over, or they don't consider them a comparable. So if something had supervisory requirement, but we said it was a lead and ours didn't have it, if everything else matched, they essentially back that out and compare it like as far as like internal equity, and they'll make some sort of weight sort of adjustment for that, but only if the match is high enough, and that was the only difference. So they would never take our lead that requires no supervisory experience and directly call it a match to something that requires supervisory experience. That is not a match. That's enough of a difference to not be a direct match. So there's some sort of adjustment made for that.
The lead operator does supervising. If
They
he
do not.
They do not.
They lead.
So that's cutting, splitting hairs.
A lead operator doesn't write performance reviews.
They can't down to any discipline.
But if you're the top person operating a water treatment plant, and you have people working under you, you're damn well supervising them.
No, you're not. You're leading the morning meeting and saying, okay, today, here's the things we need to do. I'm going to do this, you do that, you do that. And then they go off and all operate as operators. All three of them are checking oil levels. All three of them are checking valves. All three of them are driving the same equipment to do composting.
Well, say if the lead supervisor is not doing any, or the lead operator is not, who's the top person at the Trump plant is not doing supervision. Somehow that's not sitting right with me.
They don't supervise anybody. Supervising in a public agency requires a whole different set of training. I can't put somebody in a supervisory role until I've sent them out for a series of Liebert Cassidy training sessions on how to supervise and how to be a good manager and how to be aware of all sorts of administrative HR functions. The lead operator is not doing that.
But the supervisor or the operations manager is going to look to those lead operators as they write performance reviews, because their experience with other people is very relevant to those things. But the responsibility for the personnel review lies with the manager, not with the lead operator. The lead operator in that exchange is learning that part of the job, so that when the time comes that we need a new operations manager or a new assistant general manager for operations, then you have people that know parts of that job already, besides their certificate-oriented jobs. And I agree with you about the PE stuff. It used to be, you had to be a PE to sign off certain kinds of documents.
Yes.
But outside of that, there was nothing else that you had to do, or that you had to know, or that you had to be in order to do that job.
Yeah.
A title that allowed you to sign, seal certain documents.
Well, and now there's a lot of agencies that require certain positions. I'll speak from my experience in engineering. That require a PE, but all their work is done by outside consultants.
That's where the PE is.
Right. So I don't sign any engineering plans. When we have something designed by a consulting engineer, they sign it. They're the ones legally responsible for the details of that plan. Now I overlook them. I'm going to make sure it's going to work. I'm going to make sure my expertise is included in that. But I don't sign that plan set. And that's the same sort of thing when we talk about certificates. If the state requires something to be certificated, they got to do it. If they don't, let's teach someone who's a good person. There are numerous examples in this organization of somebody who started here in one role and over time migrated to another role. And I think that's great because sometimes you don't know what you want to do or what you're good at the day you start a new job. And sometimes over 30 years while you're here, you'll learn and the organization says, well, you're really good at this. Hey, can you do that? And I'm a firm believer in that. We shouldn't say, sorry, you weren't hired to be that, so you can't go over there. I'm a firm believer in anybody saying, hey, guy, how do I learn how to do that? Anywhere, anytime.
I get that. And that's my philosophy because I've spent 45 years doing that at the same place. Hey, I want to do that. So when I start doing it,
I'm a huge fan of that. Sometimes young people, we don't know who they are and they don't know who they are. And sometimes they go, hey, I'm really good at this, or I don't like talking to people, or I'm really good at that, or, okay, well, come over here. You're really good at this. Let's get good people in the right place to start and be open to how it flows over time. But if you're going to get up a step in the organization, well, you need to be responsible and accountable to the next tier up. I mean, with every step comes
Demonstrate certain skills.
and accountability and responsibility. But I thought this was really good.
I think it looks good. I'm having some trouble with some of the, like, treatment plan operator 4, and a lead treatment plan operator 4, and a senior treatment plan operator 4. What makes those 3 positions different?
Job descriptions and go into detail. We can keep diving into the weeds and
It'll be in the report, right?
that's going to be in the report. And at one point I had thought about bringing it to the committee before we got to here. But I thought maybe we set the stage of what at 30,000 feet, what are we doing and what are we doing? How are we doing? But we have a job description that's a 4, a lead, a senior, and a manager. There are very specific minimum requirements and qualifications for each one, what they do, what they're responsible for. There are very distinct differences.
We can get down those weeds later if you want to continue with this. That was just a question.
No, definitely. So that's where we are on the compensation side.
That's part of why the class cost as much as it did. I just attended a meeting with the Ojai city manager and assistant city manager. They were talking about a class and comp study. Similar size organization, 20 odd bodies in the whole package. And their study is costing $18,000. That's what they've budgeted for it. I went to him and I said, what are you getting for that? Well, it turns out it's actually just a study. It's not a class and comp study. When I asked, how can you do a comp study if you haven't done a class study so that you know what you're looking at to compare comp? And I got sort of deer in the headlights look.
We do these class and comp studies on a 5-year cycle, and there's a couple of things strike me. One is our salaries didn't move significantly off of the market range in 5 years. So a couple of them moved a little bit, but on whole, on balance, we were a little more generous than market 5 years ago, and we're still a little bit more generous than market today. So I'm glad at that. Stray from things. The second thing that struck me is there's quite a bit of change in words, in the naming of positions and in the descriptions. But in terms of function, they didn't move very far. There are new administrative requirements and new legal requirements, but on whole, on balance of 30, our job descriptions didn't radically change. So we were still sort of staying consistent, but there's enough change in both of them that it's worthy of an honest, detailed look on a regular basis. So you don't let the diversion, kind of get too far away from, what's this person do and what do they call them? Well, are you an assistant engineer? Are you an associate engineer? Are you an engineer 1? Are you a project manager 2? What's the difference in all of those? And you got to get the piece of paper and stay current. So happy that our compensation stayed plus side of market. And I think our job descriptions were fairly close and needed some work, but that's okay. That's why we do these studies. So the starting at exhibit 3 is all of the benefits. But first, I wanted to just from a overall budget standpoint, sort of bring to you sort of again, 30,000 foot level. What do our benefits and salaries cost us? And if you just took a quick thumb check in the wind on, maybe changing some of these, what would that change be? And so exhibit 2 looks at our annual cost benefit breakdown for 2024. Now, there's a little bit of wobble in these numbers because some of them are on an annual basis and some of them are on a fiscal year basis. So we've tried to just normalize them and say, here's a year. So these aren't like current as of yesterday because we take into account sort of these things. But in general, this gives you the order of magnitude and some of the generalities of some of the things. The first column, the current annual cost to the district, goes through what everything costs us. 2.5 million in salary, straight time, overtime 175,000, standby time 32. The next line, the 78,000. That's what we pay to PERS for all of the retirements that we currently have obligations on our employees. And then down below that, the health insurance premium, the cafeteria cash back, the dental insurance, vision, life, and short-term disability. Some of these, and you can kind of go through them and treat them. Some of them are actually cash payments to an employee. You get salary, you get overtime, you get standby time. You actually get $1 in a paycheck. Some of them are just purely benefits like health insurance premium, $618,000, dental, vision, and life. We pay those dollars. The employees don't get $1. They get to use that benefit. And so, there's this crossover between what the employees get to use and what we actually pay. Now, certain plans like our dental and vision, they're group plans. So we go out to and say, hey, how much would it cost to cover 21 employees? It's not by person. We can't, if you leave, you lose dental insurance. The day you start, you get dental insurance. You're under that group. So there's not an individual premium per person per se. And then vacation, sick, holiday, and bereavement. We didn't include dollars in these because there's not really a dollar outlay for district in terms of extra dollars, because if you
All up there in salary.
all up there in salaries. Now, there is some cash out if people leave and have an accrued balance and so forth, but we didn't sort of look at that on an annual basis. It's really sort of a when someone leaves basis. And then the second column, estimated range of costs. is we put together some dollar figures just to sort of frame the various sort of benefit categories and changes. For instance, if we make some minor adjustments on the red dots, that's about a $30,000 per year extra outlay for the district.
There are only 3 red dots. So that's,
Well, if they move in different dollar amounts, but the total to the district is about $33,000. We think with some changes to overtime, and we've talked about that briefly, you know, over 8, holidays, double time over 12, we think that's about a $20,000 sort of additional cost to cover those overtime sort of things. So I'm not trying to preclude decisions by the committee and the board, but at $30,000, 30,000 feet, you know, are there some sorts of ranges of dollars that some of these things add up? And so you can see how we came up with some of those numbers, and some of them, a couple of them are ranges because we don't have a set sort of guess that's got any sort of precision on it yet for life insurance and short-term disability.
on the 457 match, that's really adding a 457 match,
Correct.
not changing the PERS
Correct. Correct.
portion.
Right.
That's 2/3 of it.
So I just wanted to sort of give you this to have some frame of reference as we kind of continued the conversations in the meetings.
Just need to understand what's behind those numbers in the second column.
So when we go through each of those and make recommendations, I'll say, okay, here's recommendation A, and that's a $5,000 recommendation, and here's recommendation B, and here's recommendation C. Put dollars to those, but we wanted to at least frame sort of a general, what kind of range is this? Now, all of these that we're going to talk about on the benefit side, then a couple of very close examples, are entirely the discretion of the board to adjust. There's, with the exception of the one bereavement paid versus unpaid days, all of these are completely within your discretion.
Can you remind me what longevity pay is?
Well, this is one of the things that we do not have. One of the things we found when we did our class and comp survey was some agencies, and there was a great thread the other day on CSDA, the forum for special districts across California, to sort of talk about, hey, I've got this issue, what do I do? And Allison and I both get a little bullet list every day. Hey, how do I do this? How do I do that? One of the great sort of threads was this longevity pay discussion, and it goes back to the ladder. When someone hits step 7 in a 4, 5, 6 year period, and they've topped out,
And don't care to
qualify
qualify for a different level.
but have tremendous value for institutional knowledge. Is it appropriate to compensate someone to say, hey, you've been with us 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. Is there some sort of structure where there's an additional sort of compensation purely as a longevity structure,
Separate from salary.
separate from salary, and not included in base salary and not included in PERS calculations? It's just an extra. We really appreciate the institutional knowledge and the experience you bring. And we knew it was creeping into the industry. And so we had, it's one of the items here, I think, where I put it.
In one of the exhibits.
It's one of the exhibits. It's starting to creep into the industry as sort of saying, hey, here's a little something. There's different ways to do it. There's a dollar amount per month. There's a percentage of salary. There's all sorts of sort of ratios of, you know, at a 10-year, 15-year, 20-year sort of range. We kind of took a couple of numbers and just put a number to it and said, hey, for our organization or our sort of system, what would that look like? How much would that cost? You know, it's discretion as to what level we do, but we wanted to know, hey, if we kind of went out there and touched the market, how would we compare? So that's what we did. We don't have it. It's probably think it was on about 50% or less of the agencies we compared ourselves to, so it wasn't universally.
8 or 9 agencies, yeah.
All right, thank you for the explanation.
So the first exhibit, do you want to go through these in sort of look through each of the tables?
They,
3A all the way through.
all the rest of these are tables that the CPS provided you.
Yes. Came out of their draft report for conversations. So the first one, 3A, is salary structure. Basically, it's a COLA structure. Now, a lot of these agencies have MOUs or have some sort of negotiated sort of operating agreement. And so they have multiple year COLAs that aren't tied to a specific year by year CPI, but it's this year and 3% next year, whatever that operating agreement is. So this just sort of shows you where we are. I didn't put any analysis on it. It's only on a going forward basis. It doesn't look back at history. When we actually talk about our COLA here, a recommendation for how we, if you want to continue the same structure, we'll give you about probably a 10-year sort of what have we done, what has been the CPI, what's the average, how do things look. But this is just right out of their table. In every one of these tables, it was very easy to sort of find the median, and there was always one agency that was just very high or very low. And we have them for comparison. The second exhibit, 3B, is PERS. So there are now two PERS. Under the old PERS, which is classic, which is anybody that came into the system, came into PERS prior to January 1st of 2013. So if you were before January, you were in 12 or before, you were under classic rules. And classic rules for the district is 2% at 55, meaning if you retired at 55 with 30 years of experience, you would get 2% times 30 years. You'd get 60% of your base salary as your annual retirement going forward. If you go to 56 or 57 or 58 in your birthday, you retire later than 55, you would get slightly more than the 2% for the same 30 years. So if you retire at 60 with 30 years under classic, it's not 2% anymore. It's 2.00857 something. And so there's this curve that it crosses exactly at 2% at 55. If you retire a little bit early, it's less than 2% per year.
It's like Social Security.
It's like Social Security. So when we say 2% at 55, that's our plan. Now, we have a contract with PERS that goes back to the district formation in 1985. And I think there was this blending of rules in 85 between Miners Oaks and Oakview, where the two that had more significant sort of structures of contracts on things. And so some of the new rules for here came from that merging in 85, and some were Miners Oaks and some were Oakview. But we have a contract with PERS that's 2% at 55. Now, classic members, some agencies wanted to be more generous with their employees, and so they had a 2.5 or a 2.7 at 55, or a 3% at 50 if you were a police officer. And so there were all these sort of different flavors of classic membership structures. Those all went away after 2013. So you can have various rules before, for 2% at 55, near impossible to change. Don't even ask how, because it's just not possible. It is, but it's not really possible. So post 2013, it's called PEPRA, Public Employee Retirement Act. What they found was classic PERS contracts were unsustainable for some agencies continuing to make the annual payments on what it would cost the city of LA or the Caltrans or someone to continue that same, especially cities that had like a 2.5, 2.5 at 55. They found that CalPERS would never make enough money in investments and wanted to charge the city of LA and Caltrans more. Say, hey, you need to start kicking in more so we can make more to pay off these benefits you've granted to your employees. And the big agencies went to the governor and said, we're not going to pay it. The PERS said, fine, we're going to go to the legislature and we're going to get PEPRA passed. And so PEPRA now says it's 2% at 62. So now that 2% factor per year.
It's a point on a curve.
A point on a curve. So the curve slid down and the years went out, kind of like Social Security. So now anybody after 2013 is PEPRA. And so that's why you see this 2% at 55 and 2% at 62 in the orange bar up above, which is we have classic members and we have for members. Now, in 2013, obviously everybody was a classic employee. We've already moved, we're almost 50% PEPRA employees today. A couple more people retire in a little bit of time, and we'll get down to the point where there's just a couple of classic members. And that's just a function of state rules. So that's what this chart is. Exhibit 3C is this 457 plan option. And so we have a 457 plan. We have zero match. So employees here can take pre-tax dollars out of their base pay or their paycheck, send it to a 457 plan, which we have a contract with Voya through CalPERS. And
Take a tax deduction.
take a tax deduction and then let it grow. But we don't do a match.
It works just the same as a 401k.
401k,
The rest of the
out
world.
in the world, rest of the world. There's 401k in the rest of the world, and then under IRS guidelines, there's a 457 for public agencies that can be match or unmatched, and then there's a 401a and a 401b. So you get into all these different plans.
One 403b for teachers.
So we do not do a match. You can see how 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the comparables had some sort of match. Dollar figure per paycheck, a maximum cap per person. When we get into the weeds on this and consideration of a 457 match program, we'll put some specific dollars to our employees' assumptions and come back with some recommendations. But this is, you can see how too long ago there was no matching, and today there's over half of the agencies that we surveyed did some sort of a match program. And I think there's some potential for a conversation about the match as it relates to PEPRA, because when PEPRA passed, those PEPRA employees, you know, they got their retirement capped by the state because of PERS and returns. So maybe it's an appropriate conversation to have.
For the same reason, most corporations went from defined benefit retirement plan to a defined contribution retirement plan.
Right.
Because they couldn't sustain.
Right. So 3D is sort of the start of the medical discussion. Typically in public agencies, you see probably about 2 or 3 different variations of how agencies, the medical program for their employees. I've heard across our organization that the number one thing after people making sure they get paid right is a good medical plan. I hear this from numerous people. I think this is one of the best things we do is having a good medical plan for our employees. So we fund it through a pure cafeteria plan. Now, some agencies give a flexible credit. Some agencies give a health savings account. There's all sorts of variations of how it's funded. Ours is a pure cafeteria plan.
Is HDHP? It's in Carmel area comments.
I don't know what that HGAP is.
I understand HSA.
We'll look into that. You can see the medical component, the dental and the vision for the various agencies.
The Carpinteria, they don't show who it applies to. Everybody else, it's all employees.
I would assume CARP's all employees because they're so, yeah. So that sort of just frames the medical plan. 3E is also kind of medical plan, but it's purely just dental and vision. Again, we put the dollars in here. Some agencies do a cafeteria plan, buy your own plan. We've decided to do a group medical plan for dental and vision. So dental is through Delta Dental and vision's through VSP, which are pretty industry standard around here, at least. Dental and vision plans. Exhibit 3F is the cafeteria cash back. Now there's a difference between a stipend, an opt-out stipend and a cash back. And all of these appear to be cash back. A stipend is if you completely opt out of the whole program, you get a certain stipend. If you don't use it all, then there's a cash back. You can see who and how does various cashback structures.
Majority have no cash back.
Well, and all of them local other than the city of Thousand Oaks do not.
Is that per month or per year?
That's per month. We'll dig into some details. One of the things, and I've touched on it a couple of times in the past, and it's this continuing sort of legal discussion about CalPERS. CalPERS takes in they basically do an actuarial, and every 2 years we do one, and we have to use their special actuarial accounting people, and they look at our organization and they look at the morbid facts of life. How old are you? Are you married? How long you've been working? All of those things. And they have all kinds of statistics, and they figure out how long our employees are going to live, when they're going to retire, and how much it's going to cost CalPERS to pay the benefits under the 2% and 55. And they figure all that out. And then they send us a percentage and say, thou shalt,
Here's how you're going to fund it.
as a percent of salary, here's how you're going to fund it. And it's 11.0357% of salary. But that's all on the assumption that what base salary is. So the higher an employee's base salary, the more they get. If they can get their car allowance included in base salary, or their boot allowance, or something else, well, it bumps their base salary, therefore they get more in retirement. And so there's this constant legal pressure against CalPERS to force legally them to accept more higher than just base salary. And so cafeteria cash back money is coming under the discussion, because it's reported income, therefore it's a benefit, therefore you should use it as base salary. So there's all kinds of lawsuits coming and trying to get in CalPERS's deep pockets. And cafeteria plan cashback is one of them. And they've succeeded partially in the cashback portions. There've been a couple of lawsuits that have required, hey, that's dollars, therefore you got to include it. in some calculations, and we'll get into more detail on that, but it's not coming from small organizations like us. It's coming from people seeing CalPERS having a big, huge $1 trillion investment fund, and how do people sort of get some of that in terms of retirement.
And if people come to work here, work for some period of time, and they put money into CalPERS, and you put money, or the district puts money into CalPERS, and if they don't stay and retire, what happens to that money?
So, if someone, stays in CalPERS 5 years, they're vested. And so anything they have put in, if they leave at year 6 and they're not eligible to retire at that 2% at 55, they start here at 30, they work here 5 years, and they work here 6 years. They get what they put in back.
District doesn't get back what it put in.
Nope. And and one of the conversations we'll have is about life insurance and some of those things. And I alluded to that in our last meeting. You know, some employees have sort of voiced some concerns about, well, what happens in a tragic medical situation? If at 2% at 55, you have to be 50 to retire. Even if you're over your 5 years and you die 49, your spouse doesn't get the PERS retirement beneficiary and survivor benefits. It's complicated and what you get back and so forth, but you don't get that back, what the agencies put in. And so all of that goes into this big algorithm that CalPERS does on an actuarial, and they figure out how many people put money in and didn't take it out, either through they didn't stay into retirement, or they passed away before retirement, or they retired and only survived a year or two and then passed away. And so there's all this stuff that goes into that morbid conversation about how PERS is required. But if you stay 5 years a day, you're vested in PERS, and then you leave, you get back what you put in. So 3G, life insurance. We provide a basic structure on life insurance. You can see that there's a number of ways that life insurance is calculated. It's usually calculated as just a set dollar amount, or it's a certain amount of times your salary. This is a complicated business conversation, because whatever we say we're going to offer, we have to be able to go out in the market and buy. And that's not always easy, because people's age, and the more life insurance you want, the age comes into a factor, as do medical conditions. And so we have those same restrictions on us going and buying it for somebody.
Can't do a pool of all the employees?
Well, so one of the thoughts is, what happens if we didn't have a life insurance? If we just had a death benefit? Now, nobody has ever used the life insurance that the district has bought in its existence. Never happened. Nobody's ever died while working here. So we've paid a boatload of premiums, and not a single one of our employees has benefited from those premiums. Doesn't mean that comfort and that safety net has always been there, but it's never been used. So one of the conversations is, should we continue with a life insurance and go try and buy a group life insurance? Very difficult to buy, because the life insurance market changes every year. Rules change. They have a bunch of losses. They all change their rules. So we say we're offering something, but we're really not, because we can't even buy it. So one of the thoughts is, what happens if we just, instead of life insurance, said, in the unfortunate incident that you die while you're employed here, write you a check right out of our general fund. There's some risk to doing that, because the insurance is in theory, a whole lot cheaper because it's spread over the population as a whole rather than each individual employee. If we next year had an unfortunate situation where 3 employees passed away, tragic, then we'd have to write a check for those 3 employees. So I think I want to spend some time on this life insurance. What can we go buy? What's available? What kind of pools are out there? What kind of structures are out there that we could really offer something and actually have it exist because we can buy it? We've had a couple of situations where under our current life insurance policy, somebody has a birthday and gets 1 year older and hits a magic time. And the life insurance policy letter shows up in the mail a couple of days later and says, so-and-so is no longer covered for that amount because they're over our age limit. Or we bought something and they don't even have the benefit of it because they've timed out based on their age. So there's some complications here. We need to spend some time before we.
A question for you on that.
Yeah.
It is hard to buy life insurance these days, but you found a company that was willing to take us on. It's a district. Would it be possible for the district to buy, say, $100,000 or $200,000, some minimal amount of life insurance for the employee, but then the employee would have the option of buying the extra, if they wanted 500,000 coverage for a family?
We've talked about that. We've talked about, can we buy a base amount and through the pool or the structure of our organization, allow them to buy through us and up by the coverage amount? And could they use their pre-tax dollars through their Section 125? Is there a way to sort of purchase through us and use sort of certain avenues to do that?
This is the plan.
Yeah. So we got to dig into that, but that's a whole, the ads we see on TV for life insurance, and if you've dealt with it, it's like voodoo magic.
They emphasize the premium and don't mention the payout.
Right.
Get them all in 995 plan.
Yeah, right. And you get $700 worth of insurance.
And so then they say, okay, so if we
The
offer,
ambulance that took you to the funeral.
so needs to move, maybe needs a more in-depth conversation, but man, we got to do some business work on that. Next item, 3H, vacation. This is accruals. So at the top, you see 1 year, 5 year, 10, 15, and more than 20 year sort of columns, and then you reach down and so forth. So in every one of these different columns, one agency is on the low end of the bell curve or on the upper end. There seems to be City of Thousand Oaks, all other employees across the board seems to be, the winner of the high mark, in every category. We compare fairly well. In the first column, we give 11 days up to 5 years. The average is 13. In the second column, at 5 years, the average is 16 days. We give 16. And so there's some comparison. We're average or above average in years 5, 10, 15, and 20. We're a little low on the first column.
City of Thousand Oaks must have a lot of money. They're at the top all the way.
And we didn't compare sort of exactly on all 5 columns to any one of the agencies. Some were here, were a day or two low, and some were a day or so high, or, but in general, we were average 1 day high in every column, the first up to 5 years. So we'll come back with a more detailed spreadsheet, give you some comparisons, and give you some options. Any questions? There's a lot going on in that chart.
Looking at Goleta, it looks like there's some errors in that row there. We got all 2, 3, and 4 are all the same. 5 to 10. 5 to 10 years, there's twice, and the 15 plus. So
To attract good people, you might want to look at that first 5 years.
Well, I think when we, sort of thoughts when we get to recommendations would be something to talk about sort of how to attract, how to retain, how to have good succession planning, and how to have, some longevity. And all of those things have value to us. Everybody says that people are the most valuable resource. Well, that's a huge, huge thing. And if we make changes to those fit within your thoughts, for attracting people, retaining people, we give succession planning and longevity some weight, so that we're not just hiring people and they're doing their 2, 4, 6 years here and jumping to another agency to get a different. That's fine. I understand that people have to do that as their career, but are we at least mindful of those sorts of things?
You don't want to be somebody else's minor league system.
Absolutely. Next item, 3I is sick leave accruals. And one was off the charts with 23. The average is about 12, a couple agencies a day or so more. Pretty standard. Some places don't do vacation and sick. They just do a, paid time off.
That was really convenient to have. Really needed it.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept.
You don't have to feel guilty for staying home if you got a cold. No, you got leave.
I can tell you, our leave balances on average, everybody here has plenty of leave to take a day off. We have people with 1,000 hours of sick leave. So if people need to take a day off, we're more than supportive of being healthy. You got the time. 6 months. The next is holidays. We have 10 holidays and 2 floating holidays for 12. The average, looking down the chart, seems to be a little more generous than that, 13 or so. Really, this is up to your discretion. I'm not sure I would pick another holiday. I would sort of fall on give people a floater day to use their birthday or whatever. Some people love a certain holiday and some people want to have their birthday off. Take it off and not have to take a vacation day.
You guys were off yesterday, I think.
Yes, sir. The next item is sort of cars, phones, and education. We give everybody a phone. District vehicles are available, and we do have a very generous tuition plan, which is on the next chart. So that gets us through the tables that we have so far. Sort of my conclusion is pretty good balance for us across the board. A couple of areas for some discussion, a couple of new benefits that maybe warrant a conversation. But on balance, generally competitive and appropriate. Exhibit 4, I didn't really have a presentation and discussion to go with it. It's really just what I talked about last meeting, where it highlighted the benefits list, the handbook topic list into sort of categories, so you can kind of colorize them and see a certain amount of them are state law, certain amount of them are maybe a benefit or a addition to a benefit. Some things that just purely we're going to come out of the class and comp study as things, recommendations, and then some handbook policy discussions. So I just colorized it. It's the same conversation we had at the last meeting. And then lastly, we included the employee survey that we discussed that we got at the last meeting, and some comments we got from a couple of board members in terms of adding, sort of explanatory sort of options for
Yeah, let me just explain what I did. Took all I didn't disagree with any of the comments that you two guys provided. Tried to, simplify the wording a little bit into the document or into the survey form as best I could. Try to take into account the intent of your work. So let's talk about a few of them.
well, we can't talk about the new ones because
We can talk about the ones that are already on, I'll make sure it's on the video here. Okay, so here on the board packet, page 47 and 40. Notice, and I have no objection to it. How would you rate the management of OVSD? You can remove that. Well, I'm okay with that because that's a little less. Not sure what we're trying to do here. So, but I also thought that if we're not going to put a question on there about management, I shouldn't put one on there for the board. So I deleted the. How would you rate the board? I'm not gonna-
How did you come to the conclusion?
Was just uncomfortable with the fact that it might get into too many different categories that we wouldn't necessarily know that's where they went.
One of the things that I did in my draft introductory letter between the board and staff was I was concerned, I didn't want to come out and undercut Jeff. Jeff has he's doing a great job, he's a very difficult job. So I'm a little concerned maybe about I think we have enough questions to cover satisfaction of the employees without specifically asking about management. I just kind of agree with that. I'm open to it.
All of the employees get requirements, benefits laid onto them, either from Jeff or from the board. I felt like it was a useful thing to ask. If there is something that's upsetting you or causing you anxiety, tell us about it. We don't ask, I think we're potentially missing some critical information. That's why I would have left it in.
I'm gonna ask Jeff what he thought. If he minds having it on there, if Jeff's okay with it, I'm okay with it.
Jeff suggested at our last meeting that we change management to the general manager.
I thought he said get rid of the supervisor.
That was what I relayed to Allison was to take the supervisor out and just management.
That I did hear. You can see that.
I'm kind of fine with the rating the board. I don't have a problem with that.
You're okay with rating the board? I'm okay.
Yeah, I'm fine.
Well, let's put Jeff, the question was, you have a question in here. How would you rate the performance? How would you rate the management of OVSD? Not specific to you, but I wanted to see if you thought that was undercutting you at all. I didn't want to come across as, the survey isn't about you, it's about their overall job satisfaction.
I don't have a problem asking about me. I kind of, and so if there's a question you would like to ask and you would like information on as board members, I'm fine with that in any way, shape or form. my sort of hesitation is, sort of inferring, does that question apply to other employees, which are colleagues? Yes, they're supervisors and managers, but from a legal structure, they don't work for me. They don't even work for you. They work for the district, and they're in a different category. And so I kind of have this line between me and everybody else. And so if you want to say, management of the district, I'm fine with that. I like the conversation about adding substance to the questions. To have an effective,
Say good or bad, tell me why.
right, to have an effective survey, you have to have effective questions and effective answers. And somebody saying excellent and poor on a question about how someone feels, or do you think? I'm not sure that collectively we're going to be able to effectively figure out how to do something with that. And my like of the questions is, name something that you would like to add, name a training program you'd like to see, name a something this. Now we have something effective where we can say, okay, we're gonna do some focus work on this sorts of training topics, learning topics, mentoring topics, whatever it may be. I think those have value. To start a question with, do you think, or how do you feel, and only have poor, fair, good, or excellent. I have sort of concerns about what I would do with that if it came. But if you said, hey, pick your description, and now write why and what you think we ought to add. Well, now we have something that we can effectively implement. So I kind of fall down sort of with the recommendation that, to the extent we can, make the questions have an effective something at the end, and sort of divide a line between, this other employees and supervisors and management. And then I think we have some possibility of having some effective things to do. I think there's still the risk we're going to get a poor and excellent without any descriptions, because it's up to employees to figure out what they'd like to write. But maybe there's some tidbits and some gems in there of things that would be good sorts of things to do.
It's hard to say, does this meet your expectation, without saying what your expectation is.
Is your expectation realistic? And maybe it's your expectation, but it's not something that we can do.
But at least that leaves an opening to explain to staff, there are certain things the district is not allowed to do. And sorry, but this is one of them.
Right. No, I mean, I've taken surveys, employee surveys in my whole life. And it's a suggestion box thing. I would rather
Service providers all the time.
Yeah, I would rather, I watch a dryer guy comes, hey, I really want that 5-star rating. I'd rather have something that says, hey, I see this, I would like this safety tool, or I'd like this training, or, and that training can be a physical thing, piece of equipment, and it can be an administrative procedure. Like how do we comply with our spill report? I think we're doing a good job on lots of those things, but maybe there's a tidbit that says we aren't. Fabulous.
If we aren't, we need to know that.
Right. Right. But so I like the second part of all the questions, and a couple of questions I think potentially are too.
I want to hand it out.
So maybe what I would propose is, now we have a board meeting. We're going to put the package together this week.
Not gonna have time.
Okay. What I would propose we do is we take all your comments, Jim, your latest version that you handed out today. We have Allison write up a cover letter on a survey based on this format. If there's any sort of additional thoughts or comments you'd like to add. That Allison puts together sort of a survey with the second part of each question and a cover letter. And we bring that to you and say, hey, is this ready to go?
The committee.
Yes, to the committee.
Because we're having a 4 o'clock meeting, same day as the board meeting.
Are we?
That's your standing second meeting of the month.
Hoping this is gonna be
Now it's third meeting.
It's your third meeting this month.
So, I mean, we can do it however, if there's other things you would like to see questions on the survey, or there's thematic things you'd like in the cover letter. Maybe Allison can now put it in it's kind of ready to bless.
Well,
But it should all be on the record, on the public record in the packet before we have the meeting, so that the public can look at it, judge us by that.
one option would be to like give it to the board comments. Section. In other words, we're not asking the board to approve the survey. If Allison gets it ready by a week from today or a week from yesterday, we come to our meeting at 4 o'clock and we say, well, we'd like to change a little something here, like to change a little something. It's too late to change it because the board meeting is an hour later.
So
What we can do is present it. We can make sure we're comfortable with it. We can put it in the board packet. And at the board meeting, we can just say, were you thinking about bringing it to the board too?
Well, it all depends on how comfortable you guys are with where we are.
It's going to be it's going to be an agendized item on the board agenda.
Right, are you
And
comfortable?
that packet will be the same as what we get 2 hours earlier.
And let's just ask,
We can discuss it, discuss modifications at the board meeting after we have discussed them, if there are any, at the committee meeting.
then we can, the board won't give us any approval. They're just going to give us direction, give us their comments. And then we'll bring it to the committee and refine it at that point. Is that what
You can do one of two ways. You can do one of two ways. You can take it to the board and say, hey, we're close as a committee on a survey. Here's our close effort. Do you 7 have any thoughts on it? And see what the other 4 board members have, if they want to add something. Or if we're close and you guys are good enough with close and the rest of the 4 is good enough with close, it could actually go out without having to come back to the committee, go back to the board and so forth. So it really is, do you think we're close enough to have Allison put together sort of a final draft? And do you want to take it to the board, or do you want to refine it some more before it goes to the board?
Well, I'm comfortable with the version that I handed out today. I put in lines for, comments and explanation with the rest of people.
So
And
you sort of combined,
try to combine your 2 comments
okay,
with my changes, with something that I think meets the intent of what you guys are talking about. It doesn't mean I hit it 100%. Tried to come as close as I could. And what we can do.
and Allison will do the same this week.
Also, so maybe if you guys look over what I've prepared, give your comments to Allison, and I'll look at it one more time and see if there's anything that you can, then Allison can work her wonders with it, and we'll talk about it from now. And take it to the board for their comments. And then there's one other topic I'd like to talk about today, we kind of haven't really talked about much. We kind of jumped into the merits of the wording on the survey, but I'm afraid we've kind of created expectations doing a survey. I want to make sure we're not doing anything on this side. Yeah. Are you guys okay with doing a survey? I mean, you agree with doing it? Or?
I think it's important to do a survey. It's also important, as I tried to convey one of our prior meetings, it's important to convey, one, that we as committee members and as board members, we take this seriously. But that does not mean that that if you want something in particular, you are necessarily going to get it. It's part of our job to decide what you get. And if you're unhappy with that, it's on us and you can come plead your case, but it's our job to decide that. But understand that we are listening carefully, seriously, to what you're saying. But that doesn't mean that everything you want is going to wind up being what we do. And I don't think that we need to do anything more than that to avoid undercutting Jeff, because he works for us. And I presume that when these surveys go out and come back, that we and Jeff and Allison will talk through them. But we have to, I mean, we directors ultimately have to decide what's going to change, if anything, so long as it's consistent with state law.
Another thing we might talk a little bit about, I've kind of put some proposal together in this draft cover letter here. So how do we actually physically do it? So I think people are going to be nervous about filling out form and writing things out by hand, because we're going to be worried.
I like a fillable PDF, frankly.
I would bet, in reading our employees, that you gave them a survey. They're going to take the survey, the hard copy of the survey. They're going to circle their score. And they're going to take a second piece of paper and they're going to type out their answer the question should be numbered. And they're going to say, number one, here's my answer. Number two, here's my answer. Number three, here's my answer. They're going to staple it together and give it back.
Well,
They're not going to fill out a PDF. They're going to type it out because they're all computer literate and they're all going to zip through it.
let's talk about the stapling together and putting it back. Stapling it together, put it in a white envelope, sealed.
Or
And they would hand it to pick one person.
it should go to Allison. This is an HR thing. This should go to Allison. If there is a fear, there's a fear that I'm going to take something and disconnect a staple and throw away a bad answer, or Allison is, I think we need to have a different conversation. I understand the perspective and I get it. If they want to seal it in an envelope, fine. If they want to walk in and hand it to Allison, fine. I'm not going to make them put it in a sealed envelope. I'm going to say, return it however you'd like to return it.
I mean,
Nobody's putting a signature at the bottom of the survey.
If they want to give it in an envelope, give it in an envelope. If they want to walk in and hand it. And then it goes to her. She takes them all and she writes down all the answers to number one. And we hand it out and we say, we got 6 back, 12 back, whatever back. And here's the answers the range of answers we got for number one.
well, I was hoping that we would have a little more participatory process than that, where we have an opening, we have one employee representative, we have one director, Allison, opening them up, making copies and distributing them. So you guys can't just cook up your own survey.
Jim, if you're worried about me cooking up a survey, we need to have a different conversation.
I'm not worried about that, I'm worried about how it's going to be perceived by others.
Again, if employees are worried about me, they can put it in a white envelope and slip it under her door. We're going to have a whole range of employees who are going to walk in and say, here's my answers. And we're going to have somebody who's going to say, I don't even want Allison to know that it came from me. And they're going to walk by when she's not in her office and drop it on her chair. We're going to have the whole range of issues. This is a sanitary district. This is not cosmic top secret stuff. I have if everybody fills it out and says poor on Jeff, fine. Then we need to have a different conversation. I think these should go to Allison. People should give them back to her however they want to give them back to her. And she has the integrity to write down, here's all the answers we got to number one.
Just like we do on the GM evaluation. That's what we get back. Here's all the answers that came in response to this question, besides the number score.
Our names are on them.
Right. And you know what, Jim? Allison doesn't show me what each one of you wrote. You give it to Allison on
I
my,
didn't know that, or I would have.
she doesn't even give, I don't know when, she never gives me, I've never seen any one of what any of you have written. You give them to her, she cuts and pastes it into the summary table, the way you've written it, and that's what presented it for the review.
And at that point, the names are all disconnected.
And I'm happy to have an envelope and they can drop the survey in there. I mean, you can review the surveys or I can compile the answers and attach the surveys I receive.
Lazy you want.
I mean,
You want to do as little work as possible.
I mean, I'll do it any way that you want me to do it. I mean, as far as,
About a good practice that is not going to make the employees nervous.
I mean, like I said, I think it's a mixed group, but like I said, I'm happy to put out an envelope. I have an employee bulletin board. They can put it in the larger envelope and, to see, it's whatever you guys want is completely fine. I'm happy to orchestrate any method that you think is best.
Yeah, you just admitted that there are some employees who are going to sneak in and slip it under her door without.
There may be. And you know what? I have full faith and respect for anybody who does. If somebody wants to say,
They should feel comfortable filling out their form and handing it in with some kind of process.
well, like we can say, people here are pretty smart. If they don't want me to see it, or they don't want Allison to see it, there's a file cabinet full of envelopes right next to the printer up there. They'll go grab one of those envelopes, go back to their desk, they'll print out their answers, they'll fold it up, they'll stick it in the envelope, and then they'll wait till Allison's gone at lunch or something, and they'll walk by and drop it on her chair. If they want, or they'll walk in, there's a bunch of employees that'll walk in and hand it to her handwritten. And I can probably go down the list and tell you who it is.
The point is anonymizing is an option.
It's an option. If you want to go get an envelope on Monday, back to your desk, print out your answers thoughtfully, put it in the envelope, lick it, seal it, and on Tuesday, walk by when she's not in her office and drop it on her chair, you should have the right to do that. And there may be a couple that'll want to do that, even if they give good answers. They just don't want to be a limelight placed on them. Fine, wonderful, respect it. It really should go to her. It really should go to Allison. She should compile the answers just like she does on my review, take the names out of them. And then provide out a summary of everybody who answered number one. Here's all the recommendations for one. Here's all the recommendations for two. Nobody had any recommendations for three, whatever the spread is, and then hand it out. I think it's great.
Okay, we'll try it your way, Al.
So for the survey that, the survey and the letter that, Jim provided, that probably needs to be the basis of starting your conversation because it wouldn't be appropriate to talk about that and provide feedback outside of a meeting. Because the public won't have been able to make comment on it in its original form.
The public does have the ability to make comment on the original form, because if people had actually come here, we would have handed them a copy and they would have seen it the first time.
Be agendized. For
Yeah, that's not good enough
It has to be 72 hours in advance.
because they didn't know they wanted to come. The advantage of having it in the package 72 hours in advance is they can read it and go, oh, I'm not going. And if they don't go, they have a reasonable legal assumption that something's not going to show up at the meeting 3 days from now that they didn't know about. They can read it and say, I'm going. They can read it and say, I'm not going, but nothing is going to show up new at the meeting. And that goes for pumps or rate increases or budgets or anything. We can't.
Well, whatever you guys want to do.
But if you guys think that Jim's second version, and we're not discussing it tonight, if Jim's second version is close enough to take to the board, and the letter, the cover letter, instruction letter is close enough to take to the board, Allison can kind of work on it, agendize it for committee meeting at 4, the board meeting at 6, and see if it was close enough at 4, and see if you get, decision at 6, then it can go out. If we don't get a recommendation from the board at 6, and they still want to, let's bring it back for conversations, well, then we're back to another committee meeting anyway.
I'm fine with it. Send it back to committee and then go into the board.
Yeah, I'm fine with it as well. except not deleting the two questions that were deleted.
Yeah, let's add that. I crossed them.
They're just strikeout
I
font.
just had two other things to add before. I wasn't quite finished yet.
Oh, sorry.
You cut me off. You cut me off mid-thought. The letter's good. I don't mind that. I would certainly say have them return it in envelope. And I will take the time to come up here and sit with Allison when we open them and she compiles them.
Sure.
Fair enough.
Hey, we're making progress.
Okay, so Allison will do her magic. It'll be final. Committee at 4, board at 6.
Be the draft.
Let's make sure we have it marked.
Sorry.
Make sure you put the word draft on it very prominently, because what we take to the board, we may have some comments or changes. I don't want to presenting of something and then not changeable at all.
Just put a big draft watermark across it. Fine.
Say buy off on it, then
Okay.
Works for me.
So that's all we had on the agenda. So where would you like to? We're not really ready to jump into high speed on the handbook because we have Cassidy still providing some written answers to a whole series of questions. Legal this, legal that. So I don't want to kind of down in the weeds yet on those without here's the legal answer on this or that.
No point in getting into it until we have that.
We had a conference call with them here a couple of days ago. They were still working on them. Where do you guys want to go on anything else you want?
There's one thing I just want to, I don't want to beat to death, but got this email 9:30 last night from Robert Wong, and I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. But you guys are fixing to go off and make lists of everybody you've talked to since September. I'm not going to do that, but maybe at some point we should have a committee or a board discussion about what the requirements are. And I'm a little puzzled about what we're supposed to do.
Well, how about
Let's skip it for now. Wait till I've had a chance to review that.
give me a call when you kind of get in, Jim, and then I can maybe.
The requirements on ex parte comments or contacts are pretty clear to me because I've lived with them for 9 years on City of Ojai commissions. But my feeling is having answered Misha's questions today, next time that we have a meeting, it shouldn't be necessary to cover anything prior to the previous meeting. What do you think, Misha? Because it's asked and answered, my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. So it would be next time, do you have any ex parte communications to disclose since the prior
Since
meeting?
the
since your
February
last meeting
20th meeting.
disclosure? Yep.
Good. Any other committee members?
Thank you for your patience and consideration.
That's why we do this, and we do it in detail so that we're all satisfied that we're doing the right thing. No question.
So back to anything else you want on the Monday personnel committee? Any kind of something we can, or do you want to just do a quick update on the survey and any areas that?
Was it your intent to provide all of the exhibits that are here to the board?
Not yet. Well, I really, today was just to say, here's the data we have. And what does the first look like? And does the first look show any sort of glaring sort of things that warrant more investigation. And, you know, other than like the life insurance, we gotta spend some time doing some business stuff and so forth. Then I was planning on saying, okay, let's get the final report, or let's start maybe with some recommendations on these specific items. Take, for example, bereavement leave. It's been a conversation piece. State law says this. I recommend this. Here's why.
Well, and I will ask again when we get to that topic, what specifically does state law say?
5 unpaid.
It says you must provide at least 5 unpaid. If you do something more than that, it's at your discretion.
You could give 2 paid and 3 unpaid.
Or you could give 10 paid.
If you want to.
Well,
It has to be,
I'm wanting to make sure that the state law says minimum of 5 unpaid is the minimum.
Right.
But if you wish to do anything more than 5 unpaid or anything paid in addition to the 5 unpaid or as part of the 5 unpaid, that's for you to decide. It's not part of the state law.
Right.
That's the clarification.
that's what,
Sort of clarification I need.
on each one of the topics I was going to give you, here's what we do. Here's the state law, or if any, that governs that exactly. Here's the comparables that we just, you know, spent a lot of time and work developing. And here's a couple of thoughts on recommendations. Bereavement leave. Has to be 5. They only have to be unpaid. You can do you can do 6 unpaid.
Anything more than that,
Right.
you
Anything better than that is your complete discretion. 6 unpaid, 2 paid, 3 unpaid. You can make it any way you want, but they have to be 5. They only have to be unpaid. So for each, so like holidays, we give 10 plus 2 floaters. There is no state law that says you have to have any. There's the comparables that show our total of 12 is maybe a shade under the average of 13. Somebody gives 25. Well, I'm not recommending that we take the 25, but you know, does 10 plus 2 sound good to stay? Does an additional 1 or 2 feel right or
sound better.
sound better? Again, 0 state law, we do 10 and 2. Comparables say 10 to 2, 10 plus 3, 10 plus 4 is somewhere in the range. And then you can have a discussion, and you would come up with a recommendation. We go, I would think in my head, we would go to the board and say, okay, so committee spent a chunk of time on this. Topic 1, bereavement leave. Topic 2, recommendation, and then having a narrative and a recommendation on each one coming from me and coming from you. Board, here as a whole, here's why. Here's the comparables. Kind of go through.
Yeah, I get ready for my next meeting, so if you'll hit that gavel.
Okay. Anything else you want to add, Jeff?
No.
All right. At 5:18, we're adjourned.